You are about to go to bed tonight, and in the next few hours, something is going to happen inside your legs that almost nobody talks about. Something that has nothing to do with how tired you are, and everything to do with gravity, blood, and a system of one-way valves that most people have never even heard of. Every night, while you sleep, blood that spent the whole day fighting gravity just to get back up to your heart either gets a chance to properly drain, or it doesn't. And which one happens depends almost entirely on one small thing you do or don't do in the 10 minutes before you close your eyes. Doctors call it venous return, but I like to think of it as the body's overnight cleanup crew. And tonight I want to show you exactly how to help that crew do its job. Because once you understand what's happening in your circulatory system, after a long day of sitting, standing, or walking, you will never look at bedtime the same way again. Before I go further, I want to say something quickly, because I think this actually matters. If any part of what you learn tonight changes the way you think about your body, do this channel a favor and subscribe to Smart Psychology, because we go deep into things like this every single week. The real mechanisms behind the habits that actually move the needle, not the surface level advice you've already heard 100 times. Okay, now let's get into it. Now I want to be upfront about something because I think it matters. This is not going to be one of those videos telling you to sip chamomile tea, dim the lights, and call it recovery science. That kind of advice isn't wrong exactly, it's just incomplete, and it skips over the actual mechanism happening inside your legs every single night. A mechanism that has almost nothing to do with relaxation, and everything to do with plumbing, pressure, and gravity. Melatonin affects your brain. What we're talking about tonight affects your entire lower body circulatory system, and honestly, I think it deserves a lot more attention than it gets. Because the effect is measurable, it's fast, and it costs you absolutely nothing. Let's start with a simple question. What actually happens to the blood in your legs during a normal day? When you stand or sit for long stretches, gravity is constantly pulling blood downward, and your leg veins are working against that pull every single second, trying to push blood back up toward your heart. Unlike arteries, which have the heart's pumping pressure behind them, veins rely on something much more humble. The contraction of your calf and thigh muscles, squeezing the veins like a hand squeezing a tube of toothpaste, pushing blood upward in small pulses. Inside those veins are tiny one-way valves, and their entire job is to let blood move up toward the heart and stop it from sliding back down when the muscle relaxes. When you are active, walking, climbing stairs, shifting your weight, this pump works beautifully. But when you sit at a desk for 8 hours, or stand at a register, or spend an evening on the couch scrolling on your phone, that muscle pump barely fires, and blood begins to pool in the lower legs. The ankles swell slightly, the veins stretch, and by the time you finally lie down for the night, your circulatory system is starting from a deficit, not a clean slate. This is why so many people notice puffy ankles by evening, a heavy, tired feeling in their calves, or a strange tightness behind the knees that seems to appear from nowhere. It isn't nowhere. It's pooled blood. And it's been building since the moment you got out of bed that morning. Now here is where it gets interesting, because what you do in the 10 to 15 minutes before sleep can either reverse that pooling almost completely, or leave it to sit there all night, quietly increasing pressure in your veins, feeding inflammation, and making your legs work harder than they need to just to keep circulating blood while you rest. The technique I want to walk you through tonight is deceptively simple. And I promise you, it is not another stretching routine or a foam rolling session. It is called elevated leg drainage, and some people call it legs up the wall, though the wall part is optional. Here is exactly how to do it. Lie down on your back, either on your bed or on the floor, and bring your legs up so they rest against a wall, a headboard, or even a stack of pillows, with your hips as close to the wall as is comfortable, so that your legs are essentially vertical, higher than your heart. If a wall isn't available, propping your calves and feet on a couch cushion or a chair seat works almost as well, as long as your feet end up noticeably above chest height. Let your arms rest at your sides, close your eyes if you want, and simply stay there, breathing slowly, for 10 to 15 minutes before you get into bed for the night. I want to pause here and do something for this channel that I think matters more than most people realize, and that's actually explain the mechanism instead of just handing you a tip and moving on. Because the reason this works is honestly beautiful once you see it clearly. When your legs are elevated above your heart, gravity, the same force that spent all day pulling blood downward and working against you, suddenly starts working for you. Blood that was pooling in your ankles, calves, and lower thighs begins to drain back toward your heart and central circulation almost effortlessly, because gravity is now assisting the movement instead of resisting it. Your venous valves, the ones that were straining all day to hold blood in place against downward pressure, get a genuine rest, because there is very little backward pressure to hold against when everything is already flowing downhill toward the heart. This is not a small effect. Studies measuring venous pressure in the lower legs have shown that pressure in the ankle veins, which can sit at 80 to 90 millimeters of mercury after a full day of standing, drops dramatically within just a few minutes of elevation, often falling to a fraction of that within 10 minutes. That drop in pressure matters enormously, because chronically elevated venous pressure over years is one of the quiet drivers of varicose veins, ankle swelling, and that heavy, achy feeling so many people just accept as a normal part of getting older. But circulation is only half of this story, and honestly, it might not even be the more important half. The other half is your lymphatic system, and almost nobody outside of a physiology classroom thinks about this part of the body, which is a shame, because it might matter more for recovery than anything else we've talked about so far. Unlike your blood, which has the heart as a central pump, your lymphatic system has no pump at all. It relies entirely on muscle movement and gravity to push lymph fluid, the fluid that carries away metabolic waste, excess protein, and immune cells, back toward your chest, where it eventually rejoins your bloodstream. When you elevate your legs, you are giving this pumpless system a massive assist, letting gravity do in minutes what might otherwise take your body hours of movement to accomplish. This is part of why elevation is used clinically, for people recovering from injuries, surgeries, or long flights, because clearing metabolic waste and excess fluid from the tissue isn't just about comfort. It's about giving your body the clean, low-inflammation environment it needs to actually repair itself overnight. Nurses and physical therapists have quietly relied on this principle for decades, propping up the legs of post-surgical patients for exactly this reason, not as a comfort measure but as an active part of the recovery protocol. And there's no real reason the same principle should stop applying the moment you leave a hospital bed and go back to your own. Now let's talk about why doing this specifically before bed, rather than any other time of day, makes such a difference, because timing here is not an accident. While you sleep, your body enters its deepest repair windows, particularly during the earlier cycles of deep, slow-wave sleep, when growth hormone secretion peaks. Growth hormone is not just something bodybuilders talk about. It is the primary hormone responsible for tissue repair, protein synthesis, and cellular regeneration across your entire body, and its release is tied closely to sleep architecture. If your legs go into the night already carrying a load of pooled blood, excess fluid, and metabolic waste that built up over the day, your body has to spend part of that valuable repair window just dealing with local inflammation and fluid pressure in the tissue, instead of devoting that energy fully to recovery. By draining that pooled blood and fluid before you even fall asleep, you are essentially clearing the workspace, so that when growth hormone and the rest of your repair systems kick in, they are working on tissue that is already in a better starting state, not one still congested from a day of sitting or standing. This matters even more if you exercise that day. Anyone who trains, whether that's lifting weights, running, playing a sport, or even just doing a long physical day of yard work or manual labor, generates microscopic muscle damage and metabolic byproducts in the working tissue. Things like lactate and other inflammatory markers that need to be cleared for real recovery to happen. Elevating your legs before bed accelerates that clearance process by improving both blood flow and lymphatic drainage from the exact tissues that did the work. Athletes and physical therapists have used this principle for decades, though usually under a fancier name, and often with compression garments layered on top. But the core mechanism, using gravity-assisted drainage to speed recovery, is exactly what you're doing, lying on your back with your feet against the wall. You don't need compression socks or an ice bath to get a meaningful piece of this benefit. You need 10 minutes and a wall. It's worth comparing this to the recovery tools that get all the attention online, because I think the comparison is genuinely revealing. Cold plunges have become enormously popular for recovery, and there is real science behind them. Cold exposure does constrict blood vessels and can reduce some markers of inflammation. But cold plunges are uncomfortable. They require equipment or access to genuinely cold water, and for a lot of people they're simply not sustainable as a nightly habit. Compression socks work through a similar principle to what we're discussing, applying external pressure to help push blood back toward the heart, and physical therapists recommend them for good reason. But compression socks only assist the pump. They don't actually use gravity to drain what's already pooled, and elevation does both at once, assisting the pump and draining the reservoir, using nothing but your own body position. I'm not telling you to throw away your compression socks or skip the cold plunge if you love it. I'm telling you that this one habit, quietly performed on your bedroom floor, is doing something that costs nothing and requires no equipment, and for most people, it delivers a comparable circulatory benefit to tools that get far more attention and far more marketing dollars behind them. I want to take a moment here, because I think this is a good point to bring something up that matters to me and hopefully matters to you too. If you've made it this far, it tells me you actually care about understanding your body instead of just collecting tips, and that's exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because every video we make digs into the actual reasoning behind these habits. And once you understand the reasoning, you stop needing a list of 100 rules to follow, you just start making better decisions automatically. Alright, back to the legs. Let's talk about something people almost never connect to circulation, which is sleep quality itself. When blood pools excessively in your lower legs before sleep, some people experience a subtle but real increase in nighttime restlessness, sometimes even contributing to that uncomfortable urge to move your legs that disrupts falling asleep in the first place. This connection between pooled venous blood and restless, unsettled legs at night is well documented in circulation research, and while elevation before bed is not a cure for every case of restless legs, for a meaningful number of people, simply draining that pooled blood before lying down measurably reduces the discomfort. There's also a quieter benefit that's harder to measure but very real for people who notice it, which is a subtle drop in resting heart rate, and a sense of physical calm that comes from redistributing blood volume back toward the core before sleep. Your nervous system reads reduced peripheral pooling as a signal of safety and rest, part of the broader shift from your sympathetic, alert nervous system into the parasympathetic, rest and digest state that you need to actually fall into deep sleep efficiently. There's also a metabolic angle worth mentioning, because circulation isn't just about comfort. It's tied directly into how efficiently your body regulates blood sugar and inflammation overnight. Poor peripheral circulation, especially the kind that comes from long-term sedentary pooling, has been associated with lower-grade systemic inflammation over time. The same kind of chronic, low-level inflammation that researchers increasingly link to slower recovery, more joint stiffness, and a general sense of sluggishness that people often just chalk up to getting older. Improving venous and lymphatic drainage before bed, night after night, is a small lever, but small levers pulled consistently for months and years compound into a genuinely different baseline, less puffiness in the morning, less stiffness getting out of bed, and a circulatory system that isn't constantly playing catch-up. There's one more piece of timing worth understanding. Because your circulatory system doesn't operate at a constant level all day, it follows its own circadian pattern, just like your cortisol and your body temperature do. Blood pressure and vascular tone naturally begin to ease in the hours before your normal sleep time, part of the broader nightly shift toward parasympathetic dominance we touched on earlier. Doing your elevation practice in that same window, roughly 10 to 20 minutes before you actually get into bed, means you're working with your body's natural downshift instead of against it, which is part of why so many people report that this particular 10 minutes feels almost meditative, not because of anything mystical, but because your nervous system is already leaning that direction, and elevation simply gives it a physical assist. Doing the same thing at noon would still help your circulation, but doing it right before sleep stacks the benefit directly onto the exact hours your body has set aside for repair, which is really the whole point of timing any recovery habit correctly in the first place. So let's make this practical, because understanding the biology only matters if you actually do something with it tonight. 10 to 15 minutes before you get into bed, lie on your back, bring your legs up the wall or onto a stable elevated surface so your feet are above your heart, let your arms rest, and just breathe slowly and stay there. You can do this on your bedroom floor with your legs resting against the wall right next to your bed, which makes the transition into bed almost seamless once your 15 minutes are up. If lying flat isn't comfortable for your lower back, a small pillow under your hips usually solves it. If you have varicose veins, a history of blood clots, deep vein thrombosis, or any cardiovascular condition, talk to your doctor before adding this or any new circulation practice, because while this is gentle and low risk for most healthy adults, anyone with an existing vascular condition should get a professional opinion first, and pregnant individuals should also check with their doctor before elevating in this particular way, since positioning recommendations can differ during pregnancy. For the vast majority of people, though, this is about as safe and low effort as recovery tools get. No equipment beyond a wall, no cost, no risk of overtraining, just 10 minutes of letting gravity do the work your veins have been doing alone all day. If 10 minutes feels like too much at first, even 5 minutes is genuinely worth doing, and you can slowly build up the duration over a couple of weeks as it becomes a normal part of your routine, rather than one more thing competing for your attention at the end of a long day. I think what I like most about this particular habit is how quietly it works. There's no soreness this next morning, no dramatic before and after, just a slow, cumulative shift, lighter feeling legs when you wake up, less puffiness around your ankles, a little more ease climbing the stairs in the morning, sleep that feels slightly deeper and less restless. It's the kind of change you don't notice happening in any single night, but you absolutely notice a month in, when you realize your legs don't feel heavy by dinner time the way they used to, when you realize you're not shaking out stiff ankles first thing in the morning anymore. That's what real recovery habits tend to look like. Not dramatic, not exhausting, just consistent enough that your body quietly starts operating from a better baseline. I also want to be honest about something, because I think it matters. This isn't a replacement for movement during the day. If you sit for 8 or 10 hours straight without ever standing up, elevating your legs for 10 minutes before bed is a genuinely good tool, but it's working against a much bigger problem, which is a body that barely used its muscle pump all day long. Getting up every hour, even for 2 or 3 minutes of walking, activates that calf muscle pump throughout the day and reduces how much pooling accumulates in the first place, meaning your evening elevation routine has less work to do and does it even more effectively. Think of daytime movement and nighttime elevation as two parts of the same system. One prevents the buildup, the other clears what's left, and together they do far more than either one alone. There's something almost symbolic about ending your day this way, taking 10 quiet minutes, legs up, breathing slowly, letting gravity undo some of what gravity's spent all day doing to you, a small, deliberate reversal after hours of your body working quietly against a force it can never fully escape. In a world that constantly tells us recovery has to be complicated, expensive, or time-consuming, supplements, ice baths, elaborate stretching routine, there is something genuinely refreshing about a technique that costs nothing, takes almost no effort, and is backed by straightforward, well-understood physiology. Your circulatory system and your lymphatic system have been working for you every single moment of your life without you ever having to think about them, and for once, this is a chance to actually help them back, deliberately, for just a few minutes a night. So here's what I'd ask you to do. Tonight, before you get into bed, find a clear stretch of wall near where you sleep. Lie down, swing your legs up, close your eyes, and just stay there for 10 minutes. Notice how your legs feel when you stand back up. Notice how you feel in the morning. Give it a real week before you judge whether it's doing anything, because like most things involving circulation and recovery, the effect builds quietly rather than announcing itself the first night. If this changed the way you think about something as ordinary as bedtime, that's exactly the kind of thing we explore here on Smart Psychology, so subscribe if you haven't. Share this with someone whose legs ache by the end of every day, and most importantly, actually try it tonight instead of just filing it away as something you'll get to eventually. Your circulatory system has been carrying you all day without complaint. Tonight, give it 10 minutes to catch up. I'll see you in the next one.